you can't really democratize AI if you're not also democratizing the hardware that runs on. We spent 10 plus years trying to abstract away the software from the underlying infrastructure. So when you mentioned Kubernetes, I spent a number of years at Google and it went through a lot of those early days. And so a lot of these kind of microservices and beyond kind of concepts, AI is the exact opposite. We're kind of inextricably tethering the models to the hardware, and you need to know what hardware you're running in order to build some of those optimizations upstream into kind of your model training and things of that sort, especially the optimization side.
Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya and welcome to TFL Let's Talk. Today we have with us Ram Iyer, Chief Strategist at Akamai, and Jay Marshall, VP of Business Development at Neural Magic. Ram, Jay, it's great to have you both on the show.
Pleasure being here, Swapnil. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, appreciate the time.
It's my pleasure to host you folks here. And today we are going to talk about a partnership between Akamai and Neural Magic. But before we go deeper into this partnership, Jay, I would like to hear from you. First of all, tell us a bit about Neural Magic and then its AI solutions and how enterprises consume it.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. So yeah, Neural Magic, we are effectively an ML optimization company. So we focus on taking the ML models that a lot of enterprises are using today, and we basically compress them down to make them run a lot more efficiently on the infrastructure that they tend to already have. So we have an open source optimization toolkit called SparseML, brings that compression in. Then we have customized runtimes to run them on the underlying infrastructure. So trying to help folks run better, faster, cheaper as they're getting the machine learning workloads into production.
Now it's time for us to talk about this partnership. Anybody can, Ram, Jay, I would love to hear from both perspectives. What does it mean for Neural Magic customers? What does it mean for Akamai customer? And when you folks come together, what does it mean for the combined customer base? So we can, we start with Jay or Ram. Please go ahead.
As enterprises look to deploy their, AI inference workloads, right? Deploying such workloads on a distributed platform like Akamai makes complete sense, especially when data sources are closer to those inference work models for lower latency, higher performance, data residency, and other features, right? And when you think about these edge data centers, right, inherently the resources that are available on such data centers is scarce, or there is a lot more contention for these resources because one, they are, available. These edge data centers are in very far off locations, and then we expect a lot of demand for these, and then failures are common, and there are a variety of reasons why, there's more contention. So while we can provide GPUs at these edges, solutions like Neural Magic actually enable our customers to access these services on a more ubiquitous CPU-based platform, right? So that makes it much easier for us to manage such services on a distributed edge and make it more accessible to more and more customers as they deploy these workloads on the edge. Not to mention that it also comes with a better ROI for AI applications. I mean, I'm sure as customers start thinking about deploying these applications, the ROI and efficiency becomes very, very important. So those are some of the reasons why, we thought this partnership with Neural Magic made a ton of sense as well. So Jay, feel free to add more there.
You hit it spot on. I think in addition from our side, a lot of the evolution of the past few years, just in deep learning specifically. So machine learning and a lot of the kind of traditional linear regression algorithms and things like that, that's been around for quite some time. But as we've gotten into deep learning and the complexity of these models, and particularly the compute complexity, a lot of the time in the last handful of years in the enterprise has just been getting these models to run and trained on the appropriate data, get them to test out properly. But now when we're getting into the actual deployment, everything from the private data center to obviously edge, be that, say, a 3-node server cluster in a retail store, or perhaps somewhere else in some other remote location, getting these models to be deployable where you want them to is proven to be very difficult due to the infrastructure requirements. So to Ram's point, our ability to work with them to make those ubiquitous CPUs more readily available, just gives customers more options and flexibility for deploying those models.
Of course, in the last couple of years, we started talking a lot about LLMs, Chat GPT, the Gen AI. When it comes to machine learning, of course, AI, it has been around for ages. Companies have been consuming, but when it's come to training, sometimes having access to resources, it does become a lot of cumbersome. Having access to data scientists, I mean, it can become very complicated as Kubernetes is actually. Can you also talk about that through this partnership? Do you also see that somehow you are kind of also democratizing it, making it more accessible? Also, in terms of it doesn't really matter where a customer is running the workload, of course, their own data center or public cloud or at the edge.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was funny you mentioned democratizing AI, obviously a very kind of popular term. And I think our position is that you can't really democratize AI if you're not also democratizing the hardware that it runs on. We spent 10 plus years trying to abstract away the software from the underlying infrastructure. So when you mentioned Kubernetes, I spent a number of years at Google and it went through a lot of those early days. And so a lot of these kind of microservices and beyond kind of concepts, AI is the exact opposite. We're kind of inextricably tethering the models to the hardware, and you need to know what hardware you're running in order to build some of those optimizations upstream into kind of your model training and things of that sort, especially the optimization side. So yeah, I think again, one of the goals of this partnership is because of us trying to kind of be that abstraction layer of sorts, and we are deliverable as a container, obviously, or the work we're even doing on the Gecko platform. We're able to bring a lot of this to the partnership to give those flexible options again to enterprise.
If you look at Akamai's Gecko vision, really we are looking at it as an overlay on the entire internet, right? Being able to provide a full compute stack as a layer on the internet is really the vision of Gecko, right? And with AI going to be used in most of the applications, if not all, it only makes sense to marry both of them and provide a more provide it on a more ubiquitous platform, which makes it more democratic, because Gecko-like platforms and Neural Magic-like platforms really are so open in nature that we inherently want to enable the innovation in the ecosystem through these platforms and services. So, no, absolutely right. Great question, Sapna.
If we go to the roots of Akamai CDN and security, I mean, a lot of things that you were doing back in those days, and now we are living in this world. And when we look Gecko and a lot of other initiative, it looks more or less like this is what the future is going to look like. So laying foundations for the future workloads. So if we look at Gecko, if we look at this partnership where Akamai and Neural Magic, once again, I'm throwing this question to both of you folks. What kind of workloads that you feel were not possible without this infrastructure, as you say, hardware and AI merging? Technologies are in place, but infrastructure is not placed. So even if companies wanted, they could not do that. It's hard for us to actually talk about that because they are the ones who are doing all the innovation. But when you work with your customers, Jay, we're like, hey, this is actually paving the path for these kind of new businesses or these kind of new deployments.
Yeah, I think the beauty of the partnership is that we're kind of allowing for both. So for example, in the context of LLMs that you mentioned earlier, LLMs on CPUs aren't really known to be much of a thing. But even with LLMs, when you're talking about certain team sizes or maybe department-specific apps, Ram mentioned earlier that there's going to be these LLMs and just AI in general embedded in every kind of application. So the fact that you can actually do this on commodity CPUs, we can even get 20 tokens per second, things like that, which is way faster than human reading. So it just opens up this class of model that maybe you wouldn't even have thought of before. But even for kind of computer vision and natural language processing before LLMs, that's where we were able to kind of make our mark in getting kind of that GPU class performance on commodity CPUs. And the thing is, keep in mind, these little devices here, they tend to have so much compute power. Our founder, Nir Shavit, had done an interview a while back where he said that they pretty much get, at least back of the napkin math, comparable performance to the human brain. It's just they don't have access to the memory that is necessary to do the same kind of processing. So we're actually able to help with that, again, with a CPU-based processor. So it's really about opening up all of those workloads, kind of regardless of where the customer is trying to go. So combining that with the complete fabric that Rob was mentioning earlier and getting that much closer to the user, that phone doesn't have to go the whole way back to a data center or thousands of miles to a cloud region. Akamai is everywhere. That they've been building this for 20 plus years now. So being able to run those AI workloads there is, again, something we think is a really strong part of the partnership.
If you look at Gecko, or if you look at the way Akamai is approaching cloud, can you just give us a glimpse of what kind of future you are envisioning, what kind of future you are building or preparing for?
As I said, the Gecko, we view it as almost as an overlay on top of the internet, right? If you go back to Akamai's history, we first built performance as an overlay on the internet, and then we added security as another layer on top of the internet. And we're doing the same thing with compute and a full compute stack with Gecko on the internet. And enabling AI applications to be a ubiquitous layer on top of this is could be viewed as a future. And it's not just about running inference workloads. So when it comes to AI specific applications, right? I mean, there are systems that augment the workloads, right? Such as RAG-based systems, or features that provide data processing, data residency, privacy, security. So when we think about enabling our customers to run their AI applications, we are talking about an entire system here at the edge, and all of these can be easily built on Gecko, just like Neural Magic's innovation deployed on our distributed platform. It enables our customers to access such services in a very highly efficient manner. Similarly, we could bring in other services built by ourselves or our partners, and really, we want innovation to thrive on our Gecko platform, and it's exciting, to both build this platform and enable our partners and the ecosystem. And I'm sure that the ecosystem will find it exciting to build such services on top of a distributed platform like Gecko.
Jay, I'm kind of curious that what was the driver behind this partnership with Akamai? What kind of needs customers had that you're like, hey, this can very well fulfill that?
No, it kind of goes back to earlier on when we were mentioning kind of the fact that where a lot of this space has been for the past handful of years, it's either been in experimentation and inside of private data centers for large enterprises, or to be blunt, like big tech kind of has the infrastructure and some of the access, and that's where a lot of the innovations were even born. And so I think for us, as we're looking forward with a kind of the customer base we already talked with, and just where the industry is going in general, again, this whole conversation around Edge, and obviously Akamai's history in Edge before Edge was even cool, you could mention, from the earliest of days. I just meant for a perfect partnership because, again, we're bringing that expertise, we're bringing that capability to the ubiquitous layer. There's that word again, around the entire internet. So as again, customers and they're building new user experiences, embedding more AI into their applications. All those applications run on all those phones, enterprises in their remote locations, or the retail example that I used before. They're not all going to have all that compute sitting in their own four walls, but they need to have it super close to the users and the data being generated.
What does it mean for Akamai's customers who wanted to leverage these technologies of Neural Magic?
No, absolutely. I think to add to Jay's points there. And first of all, I would say that this was a partnership that was that was bound to happen because obviously we share our MIT roots, but we also share the keen focus that we have on efficiency and performance, right? That is why Akamai was born, and Neural Magic's main focus was that as well as they started out their journey. So it is only natural that we found the synergies between us, right? As we very strongly believe in the value of our distributed compute platform, right? And that's the biggest bet for the company. And with the Gecko's vision, I think we are on our way to achieving that vision very, very well. And we also strongly believe that our customers will like the proposition that we have in terms of running their AI workloads on the edge, not just because of performance or latency and all of that, but also it just makes economic sense, right? Customers may be running after the shiny new use case, right? But when reality hits, they are going to look at, okay, how many cents per request does it add to my cost, right? Without that making sense, the adoption of these applications is going to be challenging. So providing the cost efficiency and making it more realistic, making it more accessible, all of those things are additional features and values that we provide in this joint solution, which in our experience of customers adopting new technologies in the internet systems is something that is a must-have. So we are building, anticipating such needs from customers, and we believe that customers are going to like this a lot.
And if I may ask, what kind of customers, what kind of users will really benefit from this strategic partnership?
There are going to be a lot of use cases for AI and ML systems. Where this really makes sense is when data is being generated closer to the edge. That's where this makes most sense, right? I mean, if you have data generated in a centralized system and you want to apply AI to that, yeah, why would you deploy AI workload at the edge? But as more and more data is being generated at the edge or close to the edge, near the end user devices, that's where it really makes sense. As Jay was mentioning, getting all the data back into the centralized data center doesn't make sense. And you also want to provide an inference very quickly for the data that's being generated closer to the edge. That's one. I would also add in that data residency and privacy is becoming more of a requirement across the globe, right? So you want to keep that data that's generated in some region within that region and process it and apply AI to it and deploy your application. So that's another huge requirement where this kind of a system makes sense. Again, in the last 10, 15 years, we have proven that applying security at the edge, applying privacy at the edge is a very good thing. It offloads a lot of those processing power and lot of those requirements from the centralized edge to the distributed edge. So again, applying those at the edge kind of makes sense as well. Those are the use cases that we're really targeting. Apart from the other value that we provide that Jay and I talked about.
And Jay, from your perspective, what kind of users you see will benefit through Akamai? As you said, the infrastructure is almost everywhere.
Yeah, and actually, and Ram hit it very well. I know I mentioned earlier on things like the retail use cases. We've seen interest in manufacturing as well. I think finance, for obvious reasons, just from a volume of data perspective. But the security point that Ron was mentioning, I don't think can really be overstated. I think, again, the work that Akamai has done over many, many years to go beyond just content and latency, but into that trusted kind of content provider, trusted compute provider. I think running underneath that layer or on top of that layer, depending on which direction you want to look at it, is definitely key. Because again, as folks are getting out of experimentation and going into production, these are the things that become top of mind. So whether it's cost, performance, and or security and privacy, I think those are going to be the things that are pretty much universal. But at the same time, again, I think retail and manufacturing are probably the hot two. But again, AI is going to be penetrating everything. So I don't think there's really any industry that's not going to be able to.
Can you also talk about how customers can get started? What kind of pricing models, usage model you folks have for them?
Yeah, so for Neural Magic right now, we're effectively a subscription offer. And so really a lot of what we do, we try to make it super easy. It's based on annual subscription, based on a per core basis. And so it's really predicated on the work that we do with the Akamai teams to identify the customer use case, identify what kind of computer is required, and then it's just subscription on the cores. It's a very simple way to consume.
Earlier, I asked you, what kind of customer do you think will be using it? If I ask you, what kind of customer should use it? Because sometimes folks don't even realize, hey, this is the solution is there, we should be leveraging it.
I would say that, customers looking to, find a place to deploy their workloads have to think, okay, where is my data source coming from, right? and what is the kind of performance that I need? I mean, these are usually not the first order questions, but afterthoughts. But we would urge customers to look at answer these questions before deciding where to deploy these workloads. What is the data? Where is the data needs to be processed? Are there data residency issues? What's the latency you want these models to answer back? And things like that. And when you think about these questions, naturally we think that for a lot of use cases, as I mentioned, the edge becomes a very natural fit. In terms of in addition to the ROI of using a CPU-based system versus really using expensive GPU-based systems would be another consideration.
Yeah, and I think one thing I would also throw on top of there is to really broaden the thinking when it comes to the all-up solution, because right now the infrastructure or even the performance requirements, to Ram's point, are kind of an afterthought. Because what's happened is, since again we've been using these very high-powered systems, we just kind of set those performance marks as a number, some arbitrary number that we want our infrastructure to hit because that's what our test system said. But is that the performance that you actually need for the workload? We had one customer in particular where it was a computer vision use case, and they were getting 54 frames per second out of the hardware accelerated solution they were using. And we were able to get 30 frames per second, which that doesn't sound as good, right? But we were also doing it with a 4-core CPU-based machine. And when they realized that 30 frames per second is basically human vision quality, I didn't really need the 54 frames per second. And the workload was such that it was more of a batch type workload, so it didn't have to run real time. So it's really latency, throughput, what's your timing sensitivities, what's the obviously cost, so the traditional business considerations, right? But a lot of that gets pushed to the end right now because of, again, experimentation. So I think really just broadening the thinking of what are you building, what are the requirements, the business requirements, to then identify where and how should I run that workload. I think a lot of folks would be surprised at what you can run on traditional infrastructure.
Ram, Jay, thank you so much for taking time out today, talk about this partnership, talk about the new use cases. Thanks so much for great insights, and I would love to chat with you folks again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Swapnil. We really enjoyed the discussion, and Jay, thank you so much for all the discussions in the partnership.
Same here. Appreciate the time, folks.